Hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Talk Real Estate. This is the David Green Show, and I am David Green. Got an update for you on the tariff situation. Now, if you're a real estate investor, if you're into wealth building, you may be thinking, why do I care about what's going on with these tariffs? They have nothing to do with me. I think you might be making a mistake if you take that approach. This is the first set of what will likely be, nobody knows right now what the future holds, but looking back, I think we're going to look at this moment as an absolute game-changing moment in the American economy and possibly American history. We don't know how far this will be pushed. We don't know how other countries are going to respond. We don't know how the American people are going to respond. This is kind of an exciting and scary time happening simultaneously. These tariffs that we're imposing on other countries that have been tariffing us are going to change the dynamic of international economic policy, I guess you could probably say, and likely going to change a lot about the United States economy. So if you're somebody who is waiting to see where jobs are going to form, where people are going to move to, what type of wages people are going to be earning, and what type of real estate you should be investing in, you need to be following this. And because of that, I've been going live just about every single day and putting out a new video to give updates on what is happening with the tariff talk. Today was a pretty big day. We had quite a few developments. I've got 4 videos to go over with different perspectives on this, and then I will be sharing my perspective throughout. It's kind of hard not to speculate what's going to happen. It's also kind of fun. So I will do my best to offer what I think could develop based on how things go. Now, if I'm right, it'll look like I predicted the future. Maybe I need a Simpsons character. And if I'm wrong, well, I'll be wrong. But I like to do my best to explain my logic of why I think it's going to happen or not going to happen, and then talk about a path we could have. And if it forks this way, this is our likely scenario. If it forks that way, this is the likely scenario. But I don't think there's any going back. The toothpaste is out of the tube, folks. We are not going to have the same type of economy we've had. Whether we are completely crushed and destroyed and we can't compete globally because we don't make good products here and people don't want to work for low wages like they're willing to in other countries, or whether this is a renaissance and a resurgence of American manufacturing and ingenuity and creativity, and all of our investments and brain power moves into manufacturing items to sell to other countries. You can't deny that the stakes are high, and you want to be paying attention to what's going on right now. There are some people out there that just want to be mad. They just want to sit there and cross their arms and pout and say mean things about the president. If you're one of those people, say your mean things, but don't let that ignorance stop you from staying in the loop with what is going on in our world today. It's a very important time. Now, I can see a situation occurring that this could lead to lines being drawn in kind of like global powers picking sides, a new axis and allies developing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the video and explain how this plays out. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it has the potential to make that happen, as the decision is going to be very polarizing. So if you guys are here watching live, I can see your comments. Jose's here. He's number 1, or I'm number 1. Yeah, he was number 1. He's the first one in. Zach says hi, and Tom Rogers says, hey, David. Go ahead and leave your comments as we're recording, and I will do my best to answer as good as I can the people that are live. And if you're not live, please make sure that you leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about the show. I do my best to go back and answer all of the comments. We want to create a community here where people are involved. And that community is called Real Talk Real Estate. We have several podcasts under the Real Talk Real Estate Network. We have Mortgage Monday, comes out every single Monday. You can catch that here on YouTube, or it now airs on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I do that with my partner, Christian Batchelder, who runs the One Brokerage with me, the best mortgage country in the entire country. So if you guys are looking to finance your real estate, refinance, do fix and flips, we've got the best products out there. We've got the best service out there. We would love to show you why so many people love us. And if you're a loan officer and you want a better place to work, we need more people. We have too much business and we can't keep up with what we've got. I need more people to spread it around too. So if you're a loyal person with integrity that works hard like you'd want to be treated, please let me know. You can DM me on Instagram, you can leave a comment here, or you can send me an email. Also, if you like this kind of information but you don't have time to watch an entire video, I got you. By the way, I hate when people say, I got you to me. This has become a little bit of a pet peeve for me every time I go to a restaurant and a 22-year-old says, I got you. But I just did it. So we got to forgive everybody, right? There's a newsletter. I put one out by email called Seeing Green. I put another one out by text called Behind the Shine. That's behind the shine on my head. You can go to realtalkrealestate.com/text-letter and sign up for it. It's completely free. I will not sell your email to anybody else. I keep it only for my own purposes, and I will not abuse it. I promise. All right. Remember to leave a comment, subscribe to the show if you're not already doing so. And if you like to listen to podcasts so that you get ad-free entertainment, you're not going to find a better one when it comes to real estate. Go subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. All right, let's get into the first video we have today. This one comes out of CNN.
U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff-induced market mayhem appears to just be getting started. Trading in European markets now underway, and these right here are the numbers. They speak for themselves. They are following Asia's lead with serious losses. Asian markets, they've also been plunging. Just look at these numbers here as well. Major hits across the board. Hong Kong's Hang Seng hit the hardest of all. U.S. stock futures, they are not fearing, or at least they're not faring any better. The Dow, NASDAQ, and also the S&P 500 futures, they are all down ahead of the new trading week. Despite the turmoil, Mr. Trump defended his tariffs to reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday.
We will be taking in over $1 trillion over the next short period of time with the tariffs that I've already instituted. They're already in place. Now, what's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger. And eventually, it'll be a country like no other. It'll be the most dominant country economically in the world. I've spoken to many countries. They all want to do, just so you understand the power of what I'm doing, every country is calling and being very solicitous of us. Very, very nice. They're being very nice.
While the Trump administration is downplaying this market volatility, there may be more uncertainty ahead. Larger U.S. tariffs, they are scheduled to go into effect on Wednesday, and that's when the U.S. will place a 54% tariff on all goods imported from China. Now, in the meantime, the president says that he's willing to negotiate with Beijing.
We have $1 trillion trade deficit with China. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China. And unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal. Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus.
We are covering market activity in Asia and in Europe at this hour.
If you're wondering what he means by a trade deficit, the best way of understanding this is that we buy more of their goods than they buy of ours, which means more of our money goes to their country and the wealth transfers from America to China, according to the statement.
Melissa Bell is watching the action from Paris, and our Christy Lou Stout, she's been following Asian trading from Hong Kong. Let's begin there, Christy.
Polo markets here in the Asia Pacific region ended this day deep in the red as investors across the region continue to reject U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariff policy. Let's take a look at how the Asian trading day ended, and you can see there red across the board. Deep losses here in Hong Kong, with the Hang Seng losing over 13% this day. Also losses in Japan, the Nikkei losing close to 8%. Seoul Kospi, the S&P ASX in Australia, as well as losses in Shanghai as well. All this on the back of what was announced last week.
Now, I'm not an economic expert, but here is my interpretation of what I think is going on with why these markets are losing value. When we impose tariffs on other countries, what we're basically doing is telling American companies, if you buy products from somewhere else and have them shipped here, you have to pay the government a tax because you didn't buy American-made products. This creates incentive to make more products in America and keep jobs here. It's a way of penalizing companies who are buying stuff in other countries. And the reason they do that is the labor is cheaper over there. And so we can kind of take advantage of people that work in really bad conditions for really low money that nobody in America would want to. It gives those countries an advantage in manufacturing because they can make stuff a lot cheaper. When a company gets hit with a tariff, it decreases the profits of the company because they have another expense. Most stocks, similar to real estate, are valued based on the profit of the company. So if this was commercial real estate, we would use net operating income to determine the value of a property. That's a function of income and expenses. A tariff is like an additional expense. So if you got told that your commercial real estate was going to be taking on an additional tax, it would make all of your properties worth less money because the cash flows would go down and the NOI would drop. In the stock world, they're being told all of these companies that you own shares of stock of, if they sell to America, they're going to be affected negatively. They're probably going to sell less stuff. And then American companies are also going to become worth less because those American companies are going to take on the additional expense of paying the tariff. So people sell the stocks right now thinking it's going to be worth less later because it will be less profitable. And then they sell them and then someone else buys them at a lower price than what they are right now, which brings the entire value of the stock market down. And that's what they're describing right now. This is what's related to tariffs.
By U.S. President Donald Trump when he made that announcement saying that there will be at least 10% tariffs on all U.S. imports, effectively upending global trade norms. And ever since that moment, leaders across the Asia-Pacific region have been scrambling to formulate a response. Earlier today, we heard from the Japanese Prime Minister, who said that his government does want to talk and continue to talk with the Trump administration to find out ways to lower the tariffs being applied against his country. The South Korean acting president also advocating for talks, but China advocating a very different, more robust approach. China late on Friday announcing that 34% retaliatory tariff that is going to kick into gear later this week on April the 10th. And China also over the weekend through state-run media striking a very defiant tone and a number of online commentaries, including a commentary that was later published in today's front cover of the People's Daily, in which it said, look, the tariffs from Donald Trump, they're going to hurt. But as it said, the quote, sky won't fall. In addition to that, saying this, as a responsible global power, we should turn pressure into motivation and see the U.S. impact as a strategic opportunity. The People's Daily also added that China has not closed the door on potential talks with Donald Trump.
Okay, let me try to define what you just heard from all the fancy talk here. When we put a tariff on China, because a lot of what we get comes from them. In fact, most of, I think, what we get comes from China compared to all the other countries. So they make it, they sell it to us. They're now going to have to sell it to us at a better price if our companies are going to keep buying it, because our companies are getting charged every time they buy something from China. That's what a tariff is. China basically said, if you put a tariff on us like that, we will do the same to you. We will increase the tariff that we have on American goods. So if you're going to send your goods to us, we're going to tax you even more. That's called a retaliatory tariff. That's what was mentioned there. This is what I think is going on in the game of cat and mouse with China. America is the leading superpower. China's right behind us. And if you look at the trajectory, we are not gaining ground on China. They have been shortening the gap, and eventually they will pass us. Ray Dalio has a really good video on this if you want to go check that out. I believe it's called The Changing World Order, where he explains how this is a pattern that happens over history over and over. China's on their trajectory to pass America, and it appears that Donald Trump doesn't want to just wait around for that to happen. He'd rather shake things up and try to prevent it from happening. Now, Trump, I believe, believes that China needs us more than we need them. So they need to sell their stuff here. They don't have as many other places to sell it. They make a ton of money selling stuff here. And so if they choose to tariff us and we choose to tariff them, he thinks it's going to hurt China more than it's going to hurt America, because they're losing all the money that they used to get from selling stuff over here. Now, I am speculating. Donald Trump has not told me this, but I believe confidently enough that this is part of the strategy of what is going on. And from what I know of Trump's previous decisions, he doesn't get into negotiations when he doesn't think he has leverage. I believe that's what the art of the deal mostly was probably about. He looks at the world through a lens of who has leverage and who's winning in the deal. And he sees that other countries have been tariffing American goods and we have not been doing the same, which means it's hard for Americans to sell goods to them, but it's easy for them to sell goods to us. And he doesn't like that. Now, if this is so, China's over there and they're basically saying, you're not going to bully us into dropping tariffs on you. we are going to just sell our products to someone else, or we're going to sell them more to the Chinese people, right? And that will work if the Chinese people buy the goods that Americans were buying. I think, and I believe Trump thinks, that the Chinese economy is not strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet and buy all the goods that we used to buy. That they don't really have a whole lot of industry where they create jobs other than making things to sell to other countries. Like, if you looked at the American economy for the last several years, it's mostly been growing wealthy through tech developments, software, and now artificial intelligence. That's what's created so much wealth. It's our big tech companies. We make the best technology in the world. We sell our products to Americans, we sell them to other countries, but expensive technology. We sell software for computers. We have our best minds moved into tech. AI is now going to be replacing a lot of those jobs. And if you don't think so, you're living under a rock. We're eliminating all the people that made a lot of money in tech. It's kind of like a plank, and we're walking that plank and we are about to jump off of it. And when that happens, if we don't have anything else, we're screwed. So we're trying to get ahead of it by moving people into manufacturing jobs. The Chinese don't have something like us. They don't make technology as good as we do. What they do really good is manufacturing and selling to other countries. So by taking the US out of this, and my guess is we're going to talk later about other countries that are coming to negotiate with us to get their tariffs down. Part of those negotiations, I would think, if I was in the president's position, will be, we will do this with you, but you can't buy Chinese stuff. He's putting pressure on all these other countries to not buy the things that China makes, because if we can get it to where China can't sell it to us and they can't sell it to anybody else, and their dominating sector where they make a lot of money, their dominating industry is manufacturing, what do? How do the people in China keep buying the stuff that China's making if their jobs are in making stuff? You guys see the logic here? I'm sure it's more complicated than that. I think this is the gist of it at a 30,000 foot overview, what the president's thinking and what the strategy is. Let's get back to the video.
Back to you, Paulo.
All right, Chris Lustow, thank you so much there for the markets in Asia. Let's go now to Europe. Melissa Bell in Paris with the situation there in the markets. Hey, Melissa.
Markets opening way down again this morning, Paula, even as European trade ministers are meeting over in Luxembourg. Now, this is an extraordinary meeting that's been called for by the Polish presidency of the EU Council, and they're urgently looking at how to respond to the tariffs, even as they suggest that they intend to take their time, simply because at the market they believe that the pressure on the American administration is going to come first and foremost from the markets themselves. We've been hearing from the Polish trade minister, even as he went into that meeting, saying, speaking to the $5 trillion US dollars that were lost on the US stock market on Thursday and Friday, speaking also to this these falls overnight in Asia and this difficult opening here in Europe. He believes that all of that pressure will have to be listened to by Washington. And it isn't just coming from Europeans, that message. We've been hearing from Elon Musk over the course of the weekend, speaking to a meeting of the Italian far right. This is what he had to say about tariffs.
I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America, and also more freedom of people to move between Europe and North America, if they wish. If they wish to work in Europe or wish to work in America, they should be allowed to do so, in my view. So that has certainly been my advice to the president.
Elon Musk there suggesting that he too is feeling the pain of all this. Europeans, even as they're meeting in Luxembourg, saying that they're going to look at how to strike back, but that also they're leaving the door open to negotiations. They believe that some room for compromise can be found. And bear in mind, Paula, that the European Union is, as a bloc, the United States' largest trading partner. They believe that with the actions, the instruments they have up their sleeve, they can now make themselves heard, even as they seek a better deal with the U.S.
Now, Trump has not been secretive of the fact that what he doesn't like above all else is that countries have been tariffing our goods, which means that they buy less of them because their companies get taxed when they buy them. But we haven't been doing the same because we got addicted to the drug of cheap goods. But getting your energy from a drug is always bad in the long term. What you want is to get your energy from good exercise and good food, which is manufacturing the stuff here. When you hear people talk about a free trade zone, like Elon Musk just said, the ideal situation here, according to Musk, is that they won't tariff us and we won't tariff them. That's the ideal. So by putting a tariff on countries like the UK, whatever, Europe, all the countries there, they may come back to us and be like, hey, we don't want this. We want to sell our goods there. We'll take the one off of you. You take the one off of us. We'll play fair. And so all of this chaos that everyone's overreacting. I mean, when you watch the news cycle, it's nothing but fires and we're going to destroy the country. And Trump is a megalomaniac that just wants to make everybody poor so he can buy all their real estate and all their hotels. There's so much of this talk that's going on. But he said, if you listen, hey, I don't like them tariffing us and us not doing it back. I don't like a trade deficit. I want us to get to even. And if I got to start by tariffing the ever-loving crap out of them to let them know I'm serious, if they want to be cool and fair, we don't have to go to war with each other trade-wise, right? We'll take them off. But that isn't getting reported. It's making it sound like his goal is to try to make everything expensive. Now, it probably will make things expensive, definitely in the short term and possibly in the long term. So I'm not saying that's not going to happen. You do need to be prepared for that. And that's why we're talking about it. You're going to have to save that money a little bit better, at least in the short term, and be prepared to adjust where you buy houses, where you collect rent, where you make investments, etc. But it doesn't look like the goal, like so many people keep saying, is to destroy the economy. It's to create leverage so we can get the other countries to drop their tariffs off of us so we can finally start making stuff and selling it to them instead of us only buying their stuff.
This administration, Paulo.
Melissa Bell in Paris with a look at the European markets. Thank you, Melissa.
Joining me now to discuss, Errol Lewis, host of The Big Deal with Errol Lewis on Spectrum News, Jerusalem Demsis, staff writer for The Atlantic, and Stephen Collinson, CNN Politics senior reporter. So guys, first I just want to kick off this conversation talking about the impact on all of us, people who have 401ks, people who do not. We reached out to the audience and asked people to tell us what they're going through. I want to show you some of the responses because the stock market is one thing, but when people start thinking about whether they can afford clothes or food, that is very different. So I want to start with the Trump administration's approach, which seems to be trust us. Demsis?
Hi, Audie. Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where people right now, they're looking at numbers on a screen. They're either looking at stock markets crashing or they're looking at their own 401ks and investments. And then the really scary moment is going to be when and if does that actually impact people's jobs? Do businesses stop making investments? How does that impact our ability to actually build up the manufacturing base that Trump says he wants to build up? So we're really in this moment right now where there's a lot of hope that there maybe won't be long-term harm to regular people, but that seems really ill-placed.
In the meantime, you have someone like Bill Ackman, right? Billionaire hedge fund investor. He, of course, endorsed Trump in the election. And then here he is tweeting that he supports the president's tariffs, but he's also asking him to somehow pause or rethink how he implements them. And Ackman went on to warn that Trump's current plan would result in, quote, economic nuclear war that would scare businesses from investing in America. Stephen, I don't know who is in more denial here, the business world, right? Or people talking about the Trump administration. He has always been clear about how he feels about tariffs. So what do you hear in their scatter reaction?
Well, there is great.
All right, before we go on here, there's a lot of talk about Trump needs to be more clear about how this is going to shake out so businesses can make decisions. It's been like a week. Okay, the way that I'm sure the president is trying to play this out is he imposes a tariff so that you know he's not kidding, and he'll leave it there if he needs to leave it there. But he waits to see which countries are going to come and negotiate, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Once we know which countries we don't have a tariff on and which ones we do, who's economically allied with us and who is economically adversarial, then we can decide which products we want to manufacture so that based on what those countries want to buy. So this talk that the president needs to put all his cards on the table and tell these businesses exactly what he's doing and what's going to happen a week in is unrealistic. And I wonder why comments like that are being made by CEOs. It's a form of a dog whistle for something, which I think is going to come out as this develops, but I don't understand right now. There is zero reason why anybody would reasonably think that the president is going to tell you all 27 moves that he's thinking, because you don't know until the other side reacts what you're going to do. This is how so many things in life work. Football works this way. We're going to come out and try to run the ball. If we can effectively run the ball, they're going to have to move their defense around to stop it. And when that happens, we're going to do this thing with our offense. You don't tell the other team what you're planning on doing so that your own fans can feel like they're in the loop. That's silly. And you may have a plan, but if they respond differently or running the ball doesn't work, you got to try something else. You're going to adjust, right? You don't know how things are going to play out. A lot of dominoes have to fall and a lot of cards have to come out. Just like with poker, you have a strategy and then a new card comes out and the strategy changes. It is a little bothersome to me how many people are saying Trump needs to tell us exactly what's going to happen. We have to know. And they're panicking when there's no reasonable way that that can happen because we don't know how the other sides are going to respond. And my advice to everybody listening to this is just keep a calm head. Don't panic. So many times we've heard talk of disaster looming and everybody freaks out and it's all they talk about and they let fear into their hearts and it dominates their thoughts. And then something changes. You're like, oh yeah, that was nothing. Let's just take like the last virus that was going around. How many people were in a dead panic that the entire world is coming to an end? And now we're kind of like, oh yeah, it was rough, but it wasn't bad enough that we needed to be keeping it and stockpiling toilet paper like we did. It's another one of those scenarios. There is no reason right now to panic. There is a lot of the people that are panicking are mad at me for not panicking, right? They want me to validate their fear. They want to see me panicking and me angry just like they are. They may want to see you that way. Nobody benefits from that. Keep a calm head, be objective, observe what's happening, and think about the way things could play out, and then make your personal moves based on how that goes.
Big contradiction in that reaction. Some officials were on TV yesterday saying that this is all part of an attempt to completely transform the global economy and trading system to bring back those manufacturing jobs to the United States. The problem with that is, and Trump said it in his comments on Air Force One there, that's all about eventually. In the short term, there could be great economic pain, not just from markets and depleted retirement funds. The tariffs, most of them haven't yet come into force. That will take place later this week if the administration decides to carry on and go ahead. That's when prices could start rising for Americans. This is a president that was elected a few months ago, partly on the basis of the fact that he promised to bring down grocery prices and prices for housing. And if prices start shooting up and that starts causing the recessionary factors that Jerusalem was talking about, then this gets a lot more serious.
Errol, I want to bring you in on this as well, because you are going to have countries calling to say, let's make a deal. You are going to have countries that feel like they don't have leverage. So is it working for Trump?
Well, you're going to have countries calling. You're also going to have industry leaders calling. You're going to have individual companies calling. We went through a version of this before, Audie. Let's remember, in the first Trump administration, he imposed tariffs. And there was a flocking of industries to lobbyists. And those lobbyists besieged the first Trump White House with requests for exemptions from these tariffs. That's what the whole game was always about. And Donald Trump never made any bones about it. In that case, there were something like 7,000 requests for exemptions, and about 10 or 14% of them got through. We're going to see world leaders asking for relief. We're going to see companies asking for relief. We're going to see Donald Trump enjoying all of it. And in some perhaps random fashion, granting favors here and there. What that's going to do to the economy, I think it's pretty clear that business leaders are not going to start opening new factories or creating entirely new supply chains based on the whims of the current president. They know that 48 months from now, we're going to have a different president.
All right, that is the first video that we had for everybody. Let's go look at some of the comments that we got before we move on. Brandman said, Dave, your perspective is refreshing. Keeping cool, calm, and collected is the best course of action. Too many people are freaking out, and it's only been a couple days into the tariffs. Well said. Tom says, what are your thoughts on the Phoenix market? I'm in the process of selling my house. Been listed for a few days. Not much interest in buying a house. Should I sell and rent or sell and buy? Too early to tell. I think that you got to wait and see where people move to and where opportunities move to before you decide where your money's going to go. And we are way too early into this to be able to make those decisions. Dylan Duffy said, so I need to stop drinking my sugar-free energy drinks. I'm curious what you're getting at there, Dylan. Are you saying that we import those from other places and we need to stop because they're going to get too expensive? Tom here made a good point. What happened to Ukraine and Zelensky? It went quiet. That's a solid point there. And Taylor Stanley says, Owen Wilson said it best on Armageddon. 98% excited and 2% scared, or it could be the other way around. 98% scared and 2% excited. That is what makes it so great. You don't really know. And then Dimitri G made a good point. Do you track the 10-year treasury, or do you think the 10-year treasury will come back down? We were on the right track with lower rates and it went the other way today. I cannot predict how that's going to happen. I think Trump wants it to go down. And without going too far into that, what this is, the reason Dimitri's asking is that mortgage rates track the 10-year treasury. So if the 10-year treasury keeps going down, mortgage rates will drop. And I think Trump wants that. I know he wants it because he has said he wants that to happen. And Jerome Powell has said, I don't care what the president wants. I do what I want to do. And so if we want to get mortgage rates lower, the president's going to have to do it without the support of Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Fed. All right, let's get into the next video. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think so far, what your questions are. Do you like the content? Do you not like the content, etc.? All right, this video is our actual president sharing his thoughts on the situation.
Ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here, not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things.
That was President Trump just moments ago. Now, being taken advantage of on the world stage currently is in flux, and this is what it looks like. Reportedly, these are the countries who have called and are willing to negotiate with America: Israel, Japan, United Kingdom, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, India, South Korea, and on and on.
All right, there's also Canada, Mexico, Malaysia, European Union, Indonesia, and I believe Switzerland. Now, here's where I'm going to go way too far down the road. Curious if I end up being right about this. The first countries to come to us and say, hey, we don't want these tariffs, let's negotiate, are what I believe will form the core of what I'm going to call America's economic allies. I think these are countries that we will develop free trade with. We already saw in the last video that China kind of told us to go pound sand. So they're not interested in negotiating, but the door is open that they may do it, is what they said. We're going to have to see how much pain China is willing to feel. They were catching up to us as a world power, and this is slowing that down a lot. We are like, it's like we got punched in the chest. It hurts. This is going to be like a kick to the head for them. This is massive. We're taking them out at the knees. Their strength is manufacturing products and mostly selling them to us. Our strength is making technology and prospering and having amazing ingenuity. And a perk is cheap goods that come from China, but it's not our bread and butter. It's a side dish. It is China's bread and butter. This is going to likely affect them, their real estate values, their stock market. Their whole economy is going to get rocked by this. And it's going to take a lot of humility for them to come to the people that they don't like, that they thought they were going to pass up, and have to play nice. And I think Trump knows that. I think he knows he just put them in a really uncomfortable position. He went and turned off the hot water heater, and they're stuck in the shower, and it's cold water coming in, and they don't like it. And they're going to have to get out of the shower, maybe with a little bit of shrinkage, and come have a conversation with us that they don't want to have, if you know what I'm saying. It probably will look like, in retrospect, as a good move. There are also countries other than China that don't want to play nice with us, that are not going to come negotiate unless they have to. Those countries that don't will likely make up what I'm going to call our economic adversaries. We will not have a lot of flow of trade with those countries. And this has the potential to create a division in the world where different countries pick sides. And I would not be surprised. In fact, I run a mastermind of real estate investors. We were just talking about this before I recorded. It's called the David Green Mastermind. So if you guys are interested in that, reach out. I'll tell you about it. I was telling them There is a chance that the countries that become our economic adversaries will stop using the dollar as their reserve currency, will stop buying the US Treasury notes, will stop lending us money, and the countries that become our economic allies will continue to do so. And if that happens, you're going to see like basically the stage start to get set for different countries choosing their alliances. It's already kind of there, okay? This just draws the line a little bit more clearer, which is what I think could happen. I don't want that to happen. I hope it doesn't. I hope that they all come and take the tariffs off of us and we get a fair deal that way, like the president was just saying. But I am prepared for the fact that this might actually get uglier and you might see people kind of declare economic war on our country.
Including the European Union. How about the countries that have chosen to retaliate with their tariffs on the United States? That list includes China. Let's take a look at the Chinese index and how it behaved over the last 24 hours, down 7.3%. It was rough in Asia. The Hong Kong markets were down about 13%. But the path to peace and the path to negotiation seems to be more prosperous right now than the path of retaliation. Tariffs being the big story, they deserve more than a picture. They deserve a deep dive. That brings us to today's big three. What happens when you panic? You've panicked, I've panicked, we've all had a moment. What happens? The world closes in around you. Your vision narrows. You see only what's in front of your face. That's the same as it is for markets. Markets are voting mechanisms. They're short-term meters of people's sentiment, confidence versus panic. And one day tells you not very much about the future of the American economy. And there's a difference between markets and economies. That was laid out very well by Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. We need to get back to a time where we're a country that can make things, and to do that, we have to reset the global order of trade.
So while markets fluctuate, what are the fundamentals of the economy? It's been addressed by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It's been addressed by the Secretary of State. Here's what oil prices look like before the tariffs. They've been trending down. Oil prices down, I think, about 15% since the announcement of tariffs. That matters to you when you go to the gas station. I would imagine it also matters to you when you go to the bank and look for a mortgage on your home. 30-year mortgage rates also, like oil, trending lower. The fundamentals of the American economy, including unemployment, look strong.
Hate to cut off Will here, but I want to make a little point here. This is not being covered on a lot of the news channels. They're focusing, like the first one we saw, the CNN video, they're focusing on the stock market being down. It's a bunch of red negativity. Stocks are down, stocks are down, stocks are down. Wealth is being lost. 401ks are down. And then they spin it where they talk about how the average worker out there just trying to make a living, their retirement just took a 4% hit. It's really bad. There's blood in the streets about stocks. Well, this is a perspective that I really wanted to share because it talks about interest rates on houses are coming down. Is anyone mad about that? As well as the cost of oil is coming down,
despite the fluctuations of the market. Now, it is worth as well looking for a bigger picture when it comes to markets. If panic is all we can see in front of our face, a plan is what we can see when we look at a bigger picture. Here's what happens in markets when they have bad days. There have been bear markets in our past, and the S&P 500 has looked at an average of the recovery over those bear markets. When you have a bad day, when you might hit a recession, and the average recovery time for one of these is 18.9 months. It's also worth saying, how bad has this day been? How bad was it Friday? How bad was it Thursday? Well, the S&P 500 over the last 5 years, if you'd invested your money starting 5 years ago, is up 91%. If you had invested your money simply in the last 5 months, I heard earlier today said on CNBC, then you might be in a bit of trouble. But most people don't invest for 1, 2, 3, or 5 months. And unless you need to pull your 401k out today, what's happened on Wall Street doesn't necessarily hurt you, as long as you're in for the big picture, the plan. I want you to take a look at the Dow since 2020 and what it's looked like over time. You can see where we are today, and you can see where.
Take a look here. This is a great point. I talk about zooming out on my podcast a lot. If you guys aren't subscribed to the David Green Show, go subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And the idea is that fear always hits you so much harder, and it causes you to zoom in exactly like he said to start the video. Zoom out. That looks like a pretty positive trend. If you were looking at this, you wouldn't feel bad. If you're only zooming in on this part right here where you see a plunge, you're panicking. Zoom out, fear's not so much.
Where the panic is, the last little blip at the edge of that screen. It's always worth understanding the big picture and not the panic.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to.
All right. That was the next video, which I thought was pretty insightful, and I wanted to share with everyone. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show and like this video. Couple comments. Jazz Hand says, Israel is our greatest enemy, the enemy within. No idea how that's relevant to this, but you hear a lot of that kind of stuff. Wowzalicious is actually works for the company Hospitable. Hospitable is a sponsor of the David Green Show. Amazing company. If you guys are looking for some software to help manage your short-term rentals, I can't recommend a company better than this one. They've been absolutely wonderful to work for. So reach out to Hospitable, ask for Derek, and tell him that David Green sent you. Derek says the U.S. also needs to refinance a lot of the short-term debt that it acquired during the Biden administration. This will take some pressure off, but need to stop spending and increase revenue. $1 trillion each. Bless says informatives. And Trickster says, wait, can you explain more about the USA's bread and butter? Yeah, the idea here when I'm talking about bread and butter is where the majority of our wealth is created. Like, think about what industries have been really hot. During the 90s, it was the internet exploded, and the US was the leading country in developing websites. And then it went into computer networking. After we were like the country that made websites everywhere, we could make computers talk to each other through computer networking. Eventually, technology took that over, as well as technology took over the making of websites. You don't need a human to type out a website. Now you have stuff like Squarespace and Wix that make it super easy for you, because coding becomes like, that's what I mean by technology. Coding takes that over. So then the next industry takes over, and you saw like the real estate industry kind of boom from all the money that was coming along. And then you started to see the electronics industry that America dominated it. We started making a lot of phones here. Apple exploded, the iPhone and the iPod and all of these things. We're selling these to other countries everywhere, and we're making massive amounts of money because we're leading in these things that are really expensive. We made cars for a long time here before you had the Detroit meltdown, and we stopped making cars here. And then we went into software. We were the world's leading developer of expensive softwares that help businesses run more efficiently and track things, which allowed corporations to get really big. There's always a new thing. That's how it works. The talent, the economic investment, the attention all moves across industries based on where the opportunity is. I've been saying for a while that the U.S. real estate market is stalled. It's not plummeting. It's not growing. It's just nothing's changing hands. Nothing's moving. We're in a gridlock. And I felt like that was because we don't have a new industry. AI was the thing that we've all been obsessed with developing, and that's where all the money was. Well, now AI is pretty much here, and AI is at the point that it's going to start doing the stuff that people used to do to make it. Now those people don't have jobs. Where's the industry going to come from? Right? I didn't know what the answer was going to be. I was worried about us going into a depression because I couldn't see where we were going to have jobs formed. Guess what? It looks like we're putting pressure to try to create manufacturing. Is it guaranteed to work? No. This could be sabotaged, right? People could just say we would rather see America burn like the Joker, and they don't let it happen. The companies could say we're happy to pay the tariffs. We don't really give a crap. We don't want to hire American workers, and it doesn't work. American workers might say we don't want to go take those jobs. We might not make good products. That's a possibility that we have to look into. What if we make crap stuff and other countries just make better stuff? If all those things go wrong, or any of those things go wrong, this plan doesn't work, and we probably do go into a depression. But if it does, if we get the American people to jump in behind it, if we start making things that are excellent, if other countries start buying our stuff, if they get rid of tariffs, we can probably start to create another economic boom that we can use to pay off some of this crazy debt that we have. What I was getting into bread and butter is there's always a new thing that the economy needs to charge. Kelly says, I think seeing who's ready and willing to negotiate is a good indicator of who our long-term allies are. Good point there. I thought this was funny. Powell has been on my blocked contact list for a couple of years now. He really cramped my style. I have home buyers and sellers on the fence and not making any moves. Mr. Bison's not happy about this. Let's see what else we got here. Guitar Gardens, are you in crypto and stocks? Time to pivot to OnlyFans and feet pics. If you guys would like to send me money in exchange for pictures of my feet, it is an exclusive group called the David Green Mastermind. You can only buy them through there, and I'm warning you, you're probably going to have to take out a loan because they're expensive. I recommend the one brokerage to finance my feet pics. You can also get them in NFT form so you can sell them to other people. They're a wonderful investment. Probably will be the best move you've made. His feet, amazing feet, that guy. Never seen anything like it. You got to buy it. You got to do it today. Whether it's NFT, it's a picture, it's in person, buy the green feet. You'll never be disappointed. I call it the Shrek collection. Let's see here. Andres, my 2 cents. Lots of buyers are on the sidelines. We still have a massive shortage of housing, which is why prices are mostly high. Interest rates go down to 2% will drive prices back up. Blessed said it's my birthday. Happy birthday, Blessed. Everybody in the comments let Blessed know, whoever they are, happy birthday. Ethereal Sanders with a really kind comment said, did David learn tariffs yet? Thanks, Ethereal, for being here. Kelly says, maybe Trump wants to cut off China because they are perhaps ahead of us in the AI. Jazz Hands, David, do you think co-living rent by room model is a more recession-proof? Yeah, I do think it is, actually. Great point there. Bless says, thanks for all you do. And ZR Bison says, no refunds on David's feet pics. Trust me, you won't need it. You'll love them. You'll keep them forever. You'll pass them to your kids. Big feet. You're going to love them. All right, let's get into the next video that we've got here. I thought this was a really good interview with Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson, who always brings a somewhat objective and calm perspective. I feel like every time I listen to Victor Davis Hanson, I don't just hear one little piece of it. He sort of shares the whole picture, and I get a much better idea of what's going on. So I want to share it with all of y'all.
On the establishment right and the Trump hating left over the volatility caused by Trump's change in tariffs is everywhere. Good luck tuning into a podcast, a television show, picking up a paper without being told how terrible these decisions are and how Trump doesn't know what he's doing. You actively have to work to find somebody like you who says, let me tell you another way of looking at this, and try to disabuse some of these establishment types of their very, very well-held wisdom. So VDH.
If you guys are wondering why you're not listening to me just monologue in front of the camera and you're watching videos, it's because of what Megyn just said right there. You actively have to work to find an opinion that is broad and holistic. It's a lot of work to get the videos that give a good picture of what's going on in the economy that I think paints it most accurately versus the clickbait, the stuff that everybody who's angry at Trump is just going to click on and be like, or the people that worship at his feet that are like, he can do no wrong. Everything is wonderful. You're here watching this, to be frank, because I spent the time looking for the videos that I think paint the best picture. And you don't want to have to spend your time going through the internet to do that. Let Uncle David do it for you.
What's your thoughts on the tariffs?
Well, there is a lot of misinformation. The first thing is that I know this. I'm like you. I have a 401k, and it's been really hurt. But Donald Trump did everything Wall Street wanted his first term. He repealed Dodd-Frank. He deregulated. He cut taxes. He encouraged accelerated depreciation, and the market went up, Megyn, 65% under Donald Trump, higher than even Biden, even though that he suffered through the COVID. So I was looking at the Dow when it's 37 or 38,000. It's pretty much where Biden was in 2023. And over the Biden and Trump 8 years, it's gone up 100%. It's gone from 1,800 when Trump first entered office up to 38 low point. But if you look at wages, and this is what it's all about, even though the productivity over the last 50 years has almost doubled per worker. Wages only went up 35%. Now, as far as the psychodrama goes, you and I are elites and we understand that, but 10% of the country owns 93% of the value of the stock market. 50% are only invested at 1%. So a lot of this paranoia is.
Hope you guys caught that. You hear so much in the news about the stock market getting affected. And his point was that 10% of the country owns 93% of the stock market. So let's just round that up to like all of it, 100%. What that means is 10% of the wealthiest people in the country are affected when the stock market goes up or down. That doesn't sound like Main Street. That sounds like Wall Street. I hear so much criticism about this. Not that it bothers me if people want to criticize it. It just bothers me when people are ignorant. They're mad because their stock portfolio, and they're looking at stocks like it went down. This is a sign that this is bad. It appears that the president, who's often accused of being a rich, wealthy billionaire that only cares about rich people, is doing something that is going to hurt the wealthy people that own stocks in order to help the lower part of the country that just needs a job, that needs something to do, that wants a chance to feel like they've got some purpose and use their hands to make a living, that just wants to have a family and raise kids. And I don't know why we're not getting this perspective, because when I hear about tariffs, I understand that this is going to make things more expensive. I just also know it's going to create more economic opportunity within America. And even though I would be considered by most to be on the higher end of like wealth, I own assets like stocks and I own assets like real estate. This is bad for me. It makes me happy that the rest of America doesn't feel like they're getting left out. They're getting a seat at the table. They're getting to eat too. And this perspective is not getting talked about anywhere other than this video.
Is that these people are not making over a 10-year period what they think to deserve. In other words, their portfolios over the last decade went up by 80% and no longer at this particular point have doubled into 100%. But they're not interested on the people below who would have dreamed of having wage returns to be comparable to the stock market. The other thing is, and I don't understand this, that they are not offering any constructive alternative. I keep thinking, well, maybe the left. I remember Bernie Sanders and Nancy Pelosi said that our policy toward China was a job loser. I remember Paul Krugman said he was a mercantilist. I can remember Warren Buffett writing that we are being wiped out that was 20 years ago, by asymmetrical trade. So I'm waiting for all these voices to come up and say, no, this is what we should do to address the $1 trillion annual trade deficit, or the trade deficits that have been, without exception, continuous since, 1975, for a half century? They can either say, well, trade deficits don't matter, and I'll tell you why. Or here's a better way of doing it. Or, yes, we're paying $3 billion a day in interest on the national debt, but here's what I would do. Or here's how I'm going to get to. They don't do any of that, especially the left. So it's just, and then when you look at the whole totality of the Trump 80 days, it's, well, we went from 10,000 a day to zero on the border. Nobody said that was possible. We've already identified $150 billion that everybody on both sides admits is probably waste and fraud already. For the first time in a decade, you can navigate through the Red Sea. The Houthis are pretty much in withdrawal. Iran is completely emasculated. And somebody's talking about ending the Ukraine war, which instead of just, we'll give them whatever it takes to the end. So there's been
He's mentioning some of the things that the Trump administration has been working on with their bold moves, with attacking the Houthis, getting the pirates out of the Red Sea, the war in Ukraine, some of the other issues that he mentioned. This isn't related to tariffs. It's just related to what the Trump administration is doing. And I think the point here is like, hey, let's have a little bit of faith. Let's not panic right now. Let's stop rooting against our own country out of political spite.
Dramatic changes that there's no appreciation. And one last thing, I I think workers understand that even if they don't buy stock in the company in which they work, the stock market is important. Donald Trump used to brag that he had raised it 60% his first time, and people said, the stock market, that's not a good barometer, workers' wages and unemployment. But Donald Trump already had provided this week, you think the stock market would take note, 100,000 more jobs than the government said would be produced. And the interest rate at an annual rate, maybe at this month, is about 5%. And so he's getting to some data. And then you think, well, given this hysteria by the 10% in the media and academia and politics and the corporate world, he's done for. And then you look at the Harvard-Harris poll, and he's still 49, 46, down a point or two. So I guess what I'm saying is for me, I like to do exactly what you said. Take a deep breath and then contextualize this with the Russian collusion hoax that we all said was a fake and we're not disbelieved, the COVID lockdown debacle, the Hunter laptop disinformation fable, the lie that Joe Biden was fit as a fiddle, the idea that Kamala Harris had closed the distance and she was 3 points ahead in Iowa and going to win that. And these all were these psychodramas that turned out to be not what they were. So, and finally, one last rant. They keep talking about tariffs, recession, depression. I can't think of a tariff that caused a major recession of depression. It didn't cause the 2008. That was Wall Street. That was this reckless Wall Street hysteria that we're seeing now, only channeled into subprime mortgage securitization in the market when there wasn't capital there that they said there was. The Smoot-Hawley Act did not cause the Great Depression. We had a surplus at the time. It was unnecessary, yes. It was punitive, yes. But it was 2 years after, when it fully was implemented, it was 2 years after. What? Who caused the Great Depression? Buying on the margin and reckless Wall Street investors. So it's kind of ironic that Wall Street has a tendency to go bananas, speculate, and hurt the rest of us. And now they're trying to cite Smoot-Hawley that had nothing to do with the Depression. And they should look to themselves. And the final thing is, if they think there's going to be help from the Democrats on deregulation, tax reduction, investment, protecting American companies, dealing with the debt, dealing with the deficit, I don't think there is. Nothing's coming out of the left. Everything coming out of the left is antithetical to what the Wall Street Journal, for example, believes. So I just would like to hear what their alternatives and Donald Trump's communication, I would only suggest draw anybody's attention to it. The offshoring, the outsourcing that has destroyed the industrial base of this country. I don't like cutting federal workers, but who had ever cared about the $37 trillion debt? Who cares about the $3 billion in interest per day?
It's a really good point. And there's some comments in the chat that I think are worth acknowledging now that we're getting into the national debt here. Let's see. So Willie said some good stuff here. China has been preparing for this opportunity for a long time. To be fair, the U.S. was on this trajectory before Trump, but there's no doubt these tariffs have accelerated that timeline. And that was following up with him saying, I agree with you, David. I think Trump is thinking he has leverage over China when it comes to consumption of goods. The problem is this logic is deeply flawed today. That was true 10 years ago. You may be right here, Willie, but I need you to give me some evidence, some points that I can understand why it's not true today. So if you could put that in the commentary, the chat, we'll talk about it here. John says, someone give Uncle David a warm cookie. I appreciate that. Let's make sure it's a protein cookie. I've been in the gym twice a day, most days of the week, and so I could use it. Johnny says, bingo, that's it, David. And Back in the Cut says, I have heard the opposite of what you're saying. That is probably true. You have probably heard the opposite of what I'm saying. I don't know that I'm right. I don't know that there is a right. Okay. I think that this argument is like this notepad. And you can look at it from here and talk about it. You can look at it from here and talk about it. You can look at it from here and talk about it. You can flip the page and see something else that was written and talk about it. There isn't really a right and a wrong as much as there is information that is left out of what is being discussed. And that's what you have to ask yourself when you're watching the news is, are they telling me something because they want me to see it a certain way because it would benefit them somehow? We're just doing our best to try to not have an opinion on if tariffs are good or bad and not look at them like there is a good and a bad. Instead, we want to look at them like, what can we reasonably expect to happen if these go down? A couple other comments here on this topic of the debt that we have taken on. Jorge says, I'm a government contractor. Since the tariffs have gone live the way they have, conversation at work is much more sparse. Nobody really knows what to say. I believe that. I think that it's probably not the tariff talk as much as it is like some of the layoffs that are happening. That's got to create some tensions there too. Phil, left, right, the national debt has gone up with all presidents. I'm happy to see someone trying to reduce our nation's debts. This is a great point. When Trump was in office his first term, he created a lot of monetary stimulus and quantitative easing that led to inflation. And when Biden came in, he made it way worse from COVID, right? Both of them did it. It both created a way bigger balance sheet that the U.S. holds, which in essence creates more money, which makes it easier to feel like you're wealthy. It's kind of like taking steroids. You look really buff, but there's a really negative effect to what's going on. But what happens when you get addicted to steroids? It becomes very hard to get off of them. And that's kind of the situation that the country's in right now. Tom says, we spend way too much money. We need to cut our spending, especially when we hear about the ridiculous things that we are spending our money on. That's a great point. I think that's what Doge is trying to accomplish right now. And Derek says, Phil, right on. Both parties created this problem, which is why it's taking someone not from one of the parties to solve it, which he's referring to Donald Trump there. Donald Trump would easily have run as a Democrat if they would have wanted him in their party. He is very hard to control. I think that's why most of the Democratic Party didn't want him in there. I like someone that toes the line. The Republican Party didn't really want him either. He just won the hearts and the minds of so many of the American people that he stole the election from Hillary that nobody saw coming. And so he is considered a Republican. You'll often hear him labeled as like a alt-right or like MAGA Republican, like the most worst brand of it. But when you compare him to all of the other like traditional Republican politicians, they don't like him either. That's the reality of this. Remember how many bad things people were saying about Donald Trump from the Republican Party? He just kind of walked in and said, I think this is the best thing to do. I'm going to follow my conscience, and exploded his own party and the other people's party. Just made everybody so mad. And I don't think he went and asked the Republican Party, what do you guys think about tariffs? I think he just did it because he thought it was the right thing to do.
I was tasked to do this in a way that nobody else has addressed it. I don't like doing it, but I'm going to do it for the good of the country, even though I'm going to be hated for doing it. If he said that, I think it'd be, the other thing he could say is he's got to cease all the talk about reparatory tariffs, where he says, well, we're going to make them pay for all the stuff they did in the past, or they manipulate the currency. True. They use health and safety gimmicks to forbid import. True. But for right now, at this moment, he's got to talk about reciprocity. That American people will back him the whole way if he just says, I would like zero tariffs with partners, and barring that, I want our tariffs to be what their tariffs are. And just stop all the talk about we're going to have a 10% on everybody regardless, or we're going to tariff Australia even though they have a trade deficit with us. He can get in the second round to the currency manipulation, the VAT tax, the scams that countries use to say your products aren't clean enough or they may have disease.
Exactly.
All of that. But for right now, the American people just want to be do unto others as they do to us.
This is about Victor Davis Hanson's opinion of how Trump should be communicating his goals. And he thinks that he would be more popular with the American people if he communicated that way. And he's probably right. It's a wise old man. My guess would be the reason Trump isn't doing that is he doesn't care if you like him or not. Trump is very confident that doing this is going to work. And he's thinking you're going to love me when we have jobs in America and we're crushing it and we're not dependent on other countries to send us the equipment that we need for our own military. What happens if we go to war with Russia and we are getting our parts for our tanks and our Jeeps and our guns and our planes and our battleships from China, and Russia and China are allied? And China goes, all right, we're going to stop sending you that because you're at war with our ally. What do we do? That's not a good time for everybody to start learning how to make stuff. That's not a good time for us to try to fire up the plants and start building things and have like doors falling off of planes because we're not used to doing it. That's what Trump's looking at. And he feels confident in his plan and that people will like him, which is why he doesn't usually articulate it in a way that makes the medicine go down smooth.
And they will back him to the end of the earth when he makes the argument, I am just it's on autopilot. The fate is in these people's hands. If China wants to be happy, then just do tariff what we do, or I'll go with them on zero tariff. That's a winning argument, but not, well, Australia had a 2003 little quirk and they stopped beef. That's too intricate right now. Australia has basically zero tariffs. They run a deficit with us. We should not be tariffing them.
The Chinese that's a special case. And it's amazing, like the disparity in terms of what they import to us versus what we import to them. And, people have been talking about, Trump really added a lot of tariffs on them, 37% on top of the pre-existing tariffs that were already there under Trump 1.0 that Biden claimed to hate, but then kept in place. And it affects virtually nothing because they don't buy from us. So like, it's almost just an exercise in, it's like a thought exercise because compared to what we buy from them, they buy next to nothing from us. But today, they actually had the nerve to issue a retaliatory tariff after Trump's 34%. And Trump just issued this statement on Truth Social. He writes, yesterday, China issued retaliatory tariffs of 34% on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation. Despite my warning that any country that retaliates against the U.S. by issuing additional tariffs above and beyond their already existing long-term tariffs, a tariff abuse of our nation, will be immediately met with new and substantially higher tariffs over and above those initially set. Therefore, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April 8th, 2025, the U.S. will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. Additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with us will be terminated. Negotiations with other countries, which have also requested meetings, will begin taking place immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So let's talk about China because, the general thinking seems to be what's going to happen in North America is ultimately going to be done by deal between Trump, Canada, and Mexico. That, he already struck a deal with them first time around, and they'll probably strike another deal because we're all on the same continent and we have an interest in having healthy trading relationships with our upstairs and downstairs neighbors. Then there's Europe, which now is, acting as a bloc, some 27 countries. And I think the general wisdom is that we'll reach a deal with them too. Some sort of a deal, like maybe this is a negotiation to hit something better. So it's really about Asia. These tariffs are about, in large part, about Asia. And China, the number one, where there's this huge disparity. And then when we hit them with tariffs last time around, they outsourced a lot of their manufacturing to some of these other Asian countries like Vietnam. We're like, oh, okay, we don't have to do it here. China said, we'll do it in Vietnam. They're not subject to the new increased tariffs on us. So now Trump has included Vietnam and all these smaller Asian countries in his net. So I don't think it's any accident that he's making an example out of China with this Truth Social post, Victor. And I think he's right on because I think Americans understand on an inherent level that everything we buy was made in China. You can't avoid it if you try. From
China.
Food to toys to clothes, the electronics, you name it. They make it there. They export it to America, and we pay through the nose for it. And now Trump's trying to right that balance by bringing American manufacturing back and decreasing our dependence on this country that hates us. Your thoughts on Asia and China and how that all plays in here?
Well, traditionally in these trade wars, the country that is running a big surplus is more vulnerable because their industry and their economy has been geared toward mercantilism. And that's true, especially of China. The second thing is there's going to be a lot of opportunistic countries, Vietnam in particular, that are going to come to us and say, we can do what China's doing to you, and we will give you a better deal. We'll have reciprocal tariffs with you. But if you go after China, we're here, and they're going to pop up. It's kind of like musical chairs. If the music goes off, everybody wants a chair. Once he starts to do these deals, a lot of countries will say, if I don't cut a deal with him, I'll be the last one to get into the American market. And so China is vulnerable in that aspect. They also have 300,000 students here. We don't have hardly any there. They are buying hundreds of thousands of farmland in strategically located places. The FBI, CIA has estimated that 1%, and that was very generous, of students and people from China on green cards are actively engaged in espionage. That could be 3,000 or 4,000 people. So my point is this, is that they see us as naive and as ripe for exploitation in 360-degree thinking. If Trump gets into a tiff with him as he is now, he has all sorts of levers. He could say to China tomorrow, we're restricting the number of Chinese students that are coming to the United States by 100,000. They would go ballistic. And so would the universities who are using those and charging them 110% as a way of cash to subsidize a lot of the things they shouldn't be doing.
Tariff wars, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs.
All right, folks, we're getting pretty long here. I had another video, but I might share it tomorrow. So it's getting a little bit late, and this video is already over an hour, so I'm not going to hold you hostage anymore. There's more talk coming out every day. Make sure you subscribe to the David Green Show here so you get notified when I go live, and you get the best information from around the internet as well as commentary to help you understand it. If you're not a political or economic nerd or major, I do my best to try to break things down so everyone can understand them. Sometimes it's best to learn from the person that's not the expert, but is doing their best to try to learn, because if you learn from the people that are, it's way over your head. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for following. Please make sure you share this video with other people or tell them that they should be following the show. Remember that the One Brokerage is here for you. We want to finance your real estate. You can hit us up at intake@theonebrokerage.com. Tell them David Green sent you, and we will get you aware of our loan products. You'll get a free consultation with the loan officer to talk with you about potential strategical moves that you could make, what loans you should be using, and who the best loan officer would be for you. You can also follow me on Instagram or other social media at DavidGreen24. If you like the content, if you're watching this right now, you go, hey, I want to ask this guy a question. How come he didn't talk about this? Or I just want to tell him I support him. Send me a message. Even if you want to say you don't like how I did my hair, it's cool. I want to talk to you too. So DM me on Instagram. Let's talk. And remember, it doesn't really matter what happens because God's got the whole world in his hands. The most important thing that we can all be thinking about is where we're going to go when we die, not freaking out about things that we can't control, like tariffs or wars or even rumors of wars. If you're somebody who wants to get more serious about your faith, I would love to have a deeper relationship with you and talk about how to do just that. That's what Spartan League is. You guys can see the branding here and the t-shirt that I'm wearing. It's a faith-based mastermind that is designed to help people have a deeper relationship with God, led by me. So if that's something you're interested in and you're watching this, also send me a message on Instagram. Just put the word faith. You'll get a link to follow. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next episode.